Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be discussing Paradiso 16 where Dante is speaking to his great-great-grandfather Cacciaguida. Cacciaguida makes an assumption about why Florence's corruption and evils began. I have a couple of questions about this canto and I specifically focused on one point made within it, but first I want to walk you through my thought process in all of this, and then afterwards I have a couple questions and would like to hear what you guys think about these lines and really just overall how you interpreted them compared to me. So I officially want to start this by looking at lines 49 to 57 of 16. It reads, "But then the citizens, now mixed with Campi, with the Certaldo, and with the Filiene, were pure down to the humblest artisan. Oh, it would be far better if you had those whom I mention as your neighbors, and your boundaries at Galuzzo and Trespiano, than to have them within, to bear the stench of Augione's wretch and Signa's wretch, whose sharp eyes now on Beratri are set." So let's add in lines 67 and 68. "The mingling of populations led to evil in the city." All of these lines show how Cacciaguida is suggesting that Florence is no longer pure due to the intermarrying of people from Florence and its outlying rural areas. Cacciaguida believes that it would be better off having the Florentines and neighbors remain separate from one another. I read this almost as if Cacciaguida believed himself to be socially above Florence's neighbors. The assumption that the evils and corruption of Florence are because of the intermarrying, to me, at least from a modern standpoint, doesn't seem like the type of thing someone in paradise would nor should be suggesting. This part of Canto 16 leaves me with some thoughts and questions about Cacciaguida and Dante themselves. In Paradiso, as we know, everyone we meet is in the form of their souls, and so I found it even more interesting that even though Cacciaguida is in paradise without his physical body and blood, the blood being the literal thing that makes him a pure Florentine, he is still thinking about complications deriving from the mixing of Florentines and their neighbors. My main point is that to me, it seems strange that Cacciaguida is showing these strong thoughts of elitism even though he is in paradise. There are other souls that we meet in Paradiso who are not from Florence, and clearly I don't know what's going to happen in the future cantos, but I'm going to make the assumption that these other souls of non-Florentines are potentially higher in paradise than Cacciaguida is right now. There are Florentines in both hell and purgatory, and possibly outsiders from the other neighborhoods in higher locations, so I just can't really wrap my head around why he's kind of thinking in this way. I could also be reading this differently, as he might be suggesting this just strictly from a historical perspective of Florence and not really about the people themselves. But as of right now, this is the way that I kind of interpret it. I understand that this is Dante creating the personality of his great-great-grandfather, since clearly he did not physically meet his grandfather in real life. But this is also Dante not entirely refuting Cacciaguida's thoughts. It makes me think about whether or not Dante agrees with Cacciaguida's stance or not, and that Florence's corruption is due to the intermarrying or not. So, in all, to me, Cacciaguida is pretty much just basing his argument about nobility, status, and who the people are, what they do, around their bloodline, which for me just doesn't kind of sit right. I feel like there's more to it. So to me, Cacciaguida is basically just basing his argument about nobility, status, who the people are, what they do around their bloodline. For me, that doesn't really feel valid. So I kind of want to hear everyone else's thoughts about this. A question that I leave for you is more about Dante. Is Dante holding a different, more modern view by saying that a family's lineage is actually based on their behavior and actions of the descendants rather than their ancestors? So let's go back real quick to the beginning of Paradiso 16 with lines 1 to 6. "If here below, where sentiment is far too weak to withstand error, I should see men glorying in you. Nobility of blood, a meager thing, I should not wonder, for even where desire is not awry, I mean in heaven, I too felt such pride." Here, Dante is basically loving the fact that his ancestor is a part of nobility. Dante's telling us that even in paradise, he acknowledges and to an extent respects elitism, but then he continues with, "You are indeed a cloak that soon wears out, so that if day by day we add no patch, then circling time will trim you with its shears." Dante understands that your nobility is not guaranteed throughout your life. Time will soon rid everyone of their status as long as they are not keeping up with it in a way. I know I'm kind of all over the place right now, but let me wrap everything together and hopefully that'll make more sense. So, here are a couple of my observations from this canto, specifically on these parts. To begin, Dante respects and acknowledges nobility from a bloodline. I decided this because of how he reacted when discovering that his great great grandfather is from nobility. But he also acknowledges that there is more than just blood that factors into nobility. He understands that the descendants themselves need to keep up the status. The second is that now back to Cacciaguida, he does not approve of the intermarrying between Florentines and their neighbors. He believes that this will ruin bloodlines of pure Florentines and will lead to the start of corruption in Florence. For lack of a better way to explain this, I find this kind of messed up. How is Cacciaguida going to make this statement while he is not the most perfect, flawless being or soul himself? At least this is from my perspective. I feel like the claims he's making just really aren't justified. Some of my overall questions are, the first, how is it that Cacciaguida is in paradise with a thought like this? To me, it seems almost vain for Cacciaguida to consider himself better than the non-Florentines, that Florence is better off without them, and that all of Florence's issues started because of them. It seems like something he should have gotten over while going through purgatory, but yet he is in paradise saying all of these things. To me, it just doesn't make sense. Shouldn't he be accepting everyone now, especially because he doesn't even have a body? He's just a soul. He's no longer, at least from my perspective, that full, pure Florentine. He's a soul, just like every other person there. So that's just kind of what's running through my head with that. I want to know what you guys think about this, or if you have any different thoughts based on your knowledge of Florence's history, if that could factor in. And do you feel that Cacciaguida's point is valid? What is your take on all of this? The next question is, where do you think Dante stands on all of this? Is he more in agreement with Cacciaguida, or do you think he understands that your blood does not necessarily decide who you are? Or, lastly, if you read this in a complete different way, what do you make of all of this? How do you read Cacciaguida's lines? And that same question does apply to Dante's lines as well. And that's basically everything I have to say. I will probably upload what I said. Maybe that'll make everything clear if you have a written text of what I'm saying. And so thanks for listening. See you in class on Zoom tomorrow.